For years, China has been the world's go-to hub for manufacturing. It was the place where major companies from Apple to Nike, Samsung, and Toyota set up their factories. The country's vast workforce, cost-effective production, and efficient supply chains made it the ideal location for manufacturing everything from electronics to clothing. But today, something is shifting. The very companies that once thrived in China are now starting to turn away. Orders are being canceled, raw materials are going to waste, and the most troubling part is that manufacturing companies in China are folding, leaving workers stranded without jobs. The world's factory floor is showing signs of a serious change, and it's leaving a lot of uncertainty in its wake. In April, there have been so many reports of factories closing up, and in some cases, they're doing so without any warning, leaving workers stranded with no jobs and no explanation. It's causing a ripple effect that's hard to ignore. One of the most striking examples came when a person in Shanghai shared a video that quickly started making rounds on social media. In the video, you can see this massive factory workshop, which used to cover tens of thousands of square meters. But now, it's completely empty. Like, totally deserted. It's honestly a little eerie. The contrast between the busy factory floor it once was and the silence of the space now really gives off this sense of drastic change. And unfortunately, it's not the good kind. Then, just the day before, on April 24th, a factory boss in Guangzhou was caught on camera looking visibly concerned while standing next to piles of branded materials just sitting there, unused, in the warehouse. There's no movement, no workers, the production lines are at a complete standstill. Factories and businesses in China are now truly feeling the effects of the tariff war, and it's becoming increasingly clear that it's raising the cost of doing business in the country. For years, China was the golden child of global manufacturing, attracting companies from all over the world with its promise of cheap labor and efficient, cost-effective production. But that's no longer the case. These tariffs are hitting Chinese manufacturers hard, and they're scrambling to adjust. In Guangdong, a second-hand equipment dealer has witnessed a troubling trend: factories shutting down and selling off their equipment at rock-bottom prices. This has become a frequent occurrence in recent months, with factory owners making the difficult decision to cut their losses and liquidate their assets before fully launching their operations. One recent case, dated April 20th, highlights the dire situation. The dealer purchased a batch of CNC machines that had barely been used. The factory owner had just finished building the plant and investing in the necessary equipment, but full production never even got underway. The reason? The ongoing trade war and the heavy toll it has taken on the industry. Faced with escalating costs and a grim outlook for the future, the factory owner saw no viable way forward and decided to shut down the operation before it even really began.
What are the odds of a factory owner surviving in today's climate? It feels like every factory I come across is shutting its doors. Another one just fell apart and it hadn't even gotten off the ground yet. This owner had invested over $1,000,000 into a set of CNC machines, hoping to make a big splash. But after just a few dozen hours of testing and lacking the confidence to even produce a sample, he chose to sell everything. Maybe that was the right call. The sad truth is, it all ended before it even really started. After all that time and money, how much is going to be lost on these machines?
This has become a sad reality for many manufacturers in China, having to abandon their dreams and investments due to external economic pressures, like the trade war, that they couldn't overcome. On April 25th, hundreds of workers were still protesting at Guangzhou Huyang, an electric appliance company, after nearly a month of demonstrations. The trouble started on April 1st when the company suddenly announced a 2-month shutdown and locked the workers out of the factory. Understandably, the workers were angry and started demanding compensation. Some workers shared that over the past year, the company had already begun moving some of its orders to other factories in the group. They also changed the working hours to a standard 8-hour day with weekends off, which caused many workers' pay to drop significantly. Longtime employees, some of whom had worked there for over 20 years, felt like the company was using the shutdown as a way to lay them off without having to pay severance. It gets even more interesting when you look at the company's background. Guangzhou Electric, founded in 1992, is part of Taiwan's Wesco Group and specializes in making ceiling fans and lighting, all of which are sold overseas. Just a few days before the shutdown, Chinese state media had actually praised Guangzhou's trade performance, saying the city's imports and exports had risen by 6.9% in the past 2 months. Even more ironic, Guangzhou Electric was highlighted as a standout company in the report. The company's deputy general manager, Ging F.G., said exports had grown by about 9% in the first 2 months of the year. He also mentioned that they had invested heavily in research and development to stay competitive, with most of their products going to the US and Europe. But now, thanks to the US-China tariff war, all that competitiveness seems to have disappeared, and the company is stuck in a shutdown. It's a reminder of just how much the trade war is impacting businesses, even those that seemed to be thriving just a short time ago.
Manufacturing has always been at the heart of China's economy. For decades, the country was known as the world's factory. At its peak in the early 2010s, manufacturing accounted for nearly 30% of China's GDP, making it a massive driver of economic growth. But things have started to shift in recent years. Now, manufacturing in China makes up only about 26% of the country's GDP. While that might not sound like a huge drop, when you consider China's GDP is projected to hit around $18 trillion in 2025, that 4% decline adds up to around $700 billion. That's a lot of money and a clear sign that China's manufacturing sector isn't what it used to be. One of the major reasons for this decline is the trade war, especially the tariffs imposed by the United States. These tariffs have made it more expensive for Chinese manufacturers to export their goods, which has affected both their ability to sell abroad and the overall competitiveness of their products. As a result, many manufacturers are struggling to keep up. Some factories have had to shut down or cut back production, and jobs are being lost. The impact of these changes goes beyond just the factories. China's economy as a whole is feeling the strain. Back in the early 2010s, when manufacturing was booming, China's GDP was growing by 9 to 10% per year. Now, with the slowdown in manufacturing, that growth rate is projected to dip to around 4% in 2025. This is a huge difference, showing just how much China's economy is being affected by the decline in manufacturing. It's also worth noting that China's export orders have taken a hit too. In 2024, exports of manufactured goods dropped by 8%, marking the sharpest decline in over a decade. This decline in exports is causing a ripple effect. Factories are closing, workers are losing jobs, and local economies are struggling. Unemployment is rising in some regions, and the government is facing increasing pressure to find solutions to these problems. A TikTok video posted by a user in China highlighted the devastating effects of US tariffs on a paper bag factory. The factory, which had already printed orders for clients, was told by its customers that they no longer needed the products. As a result, the entire operation was about to shut down. The factory owner expressed confusion, asking if people were no longer eating, as everything seemed to grind to a halt. In the video, the factory, which employed over 100 workers, was seen recalling all of its vehicles. The worker, frustrated by the situation, explained how they had earned a significant amount of money earlier that day, but it wasn't enough to cover basic necessities like groceries, let alone keep the factory running. The workers were left feeling hopeless, and many started to question the point of continuing. It was clear without orders, there was no work, and without work, there was no pay. The crisis wasn't isolated to just this factory. As factories across China faced similar shutdowns, some owners were even fleeing, taking goods with them. Workers, unable to receive wages, took materials as payment for debts. Meanwhile, factories that still had machines were stuck with piles of unsold equipment. These machines, which had once been ordered for export to the US, were now sitting idle due to Trump's tariffs, their value plummeting. Some factories have even started what workers are calling a long holiday, meaning they have no work and no way of making money. Machinery, which used to be a valuable asset, is now piling up outside with no buyers in sight. As many factories shut down, factory owners are attempting to sell their equipment, but with so many machines on the market, prices are dropping and no one is interested. This situation highlights just how much the tariffs are impacting China's manufacturing sector. Factories are going bankrupt and machinery worth millions is being treated like scrap.
The time has come for both the Chinese and U.S. governments to put aside ego and political differences and focus on finding solutions that prioritize the well-being of their citizens and the health of the global economy. Negotiations, compromises, and policies that ease the burden on workers and businesses should be a top priority. The longer the situation remains unresolved, the harder it will be for people to bounce back, and the more damage will be done to both nations' economies. For the sake of the people affected and the future of global trade, both governments need to recognize that the cost of ongoing tensions is far greater than the short-term benefits of continuing down this path. The focus should shift towards solutions that help workers, protect businesses, and ensure that the economy doesn't collapse under the weight of these trade disputes. The time for action is now.